Welcome back to the Dynasty Football Key. I wanted to try something a little bit different today. We've got some rumors coming out that Mike Williams may be on his way to the Kansas City Chiefs tomorrow. This is just pure speculation, but I wanted to at least mention what would that impact be if Mike Williams ended up joining the Kansas City Chiefs. And right now, without a team, Mike Williams is sitting at wide receiver 75. And I would think that if he were to sign to the Chiefs, he'd be in that top 36 wide receiver range. Here you've got Chris Godwin at wide receiver 38. He's at 28 years old, which is the same age as Mike Williams. Okay, 1 year older Mike Williams is, but if he were to sign to the Chiefs, I'm sure it would be for 3 years. And on a deal like that, I think that would be good enough to where you could go ahead and say, hey, I've got Mike Williams attached to Patrick Mahomes for the next 3 years. That's good enough to invest in on a win now team, just as a wide receiver 3 or as a flex play. And that would put you in a good spot to where I could see, in 2024, him producing over someone ahead of him, like a Josh Downs. That's the wide receiver 2. And I would see Mike Williams as the wide receiver 2, maybe the third option. I do respect what Rashee Rice did in this past season, and Travis Kelce is still there taking targets. So for this next 2024 season, I could see all 3 wide receivers being in play, and Mike Williams would fill that deep threat role that was left with Tyreek Hill leaving. So that'd be really interesting. Again, would have him in this wide receiver 38, 36 range from a dynasty perspective. And then for this season, he'd be in that top 30, top 35 receivers for me for what I would project. And just some other news that has already transpired. Sam Howell being traded to the Seattle Seahawks. So he'll be a good backup there for Geno Smith. If anything were to happen, this team is really in win now mode. So if anything goes down, they want to be able to have an option to where, okay, we can continue to compete even if Geno Smith goes down. And then you've got Curtis Samuel now signing with the Buffalo Bills. So he's going to step in for Gabe Davis, at worst wide receiver 3. We'll see what they do in the draft. And after that, maybe Khalil Shakir is the wide receiver 2. Maybe he's the wide receiver 3. But with the contract, $30 million, I mean, that's a significant investment in him. I think at least half of that was guaranteed. I could see that putting Curtis Samuel, who's currently at wide receiver 84, he again would be that wide receiver 3 for the team. From a dynasty perspective, at 27 years old, it's he still is in his prime. He's used as a move wide receiver, really flexible how teams will utilize him. So maybe the targets are not consistent because they're using him out of the backfield a little bit. But what we've got in this range, again, not fully updated, but you got Darnell Mooney ahead of him, who's got a decent contract with the Falcons, and now Kirk Cousins signing over there. So, I would put Curtis Samuel ahead of a Treylon Burks, who the Tennessee Titans now have kind of replaced him in the pecking order. I would have him ahead of a Trey Palmer since Mike Evans re-signed. But from a long-term perspective, maybe Trey Palmer can do something. There's a lot of these rookies that we don't know the landing spot. That's where it gets really tricky. So any of the names like a Ricky Pearsall that I'm interested in, it gets a little tougher to move Curtis Samuel ahead of them. Still, he would probably be in this range from a dynasty perspective, this wide receiver 70 range. And let's go back and take a look. Yeah, also Rondale Moore headed to Atlanta. Atlanta Falcons really making some moves to make sure that Kirk Cousins has some options in the passing game. Rondale Moore is kind of similar to Curtis Samuel in the ability that he's got, just being able to move all over the field. Really quick player, kind of in that gadget role a lot of times is what they're best served as. Big drop for Rondale Moore just due to all of the weapons that they already have there. So don't really need to dive too deeper into him. He's more of just a deep stash option. AJ Dillon, he re-signs with the Packers, so he'll continue to be a backup. So no real change except for the fact that Josh Jacobs is probably more of a workhorse than the previous running back. So, Aaron Jones, he was kind of a workhorse, but I just feel like Josh Jacobs is a little bit more so. So I just don't think AJ Dillon rises at all. He's only a little bit older than he was this past season. So, his value will just continue to fall. And then we've got Joe Flacco here, who's signing up to be the backup for Anthony Richardson, who his play style lends itself to get injured. So not a terrible stash for someone that's got Anthony Richardson if they think they were competing, because we did see the production Flacco had this past season. in really just a few starts, and he got some decent production. So not a bad option if you have a really deep league. But that's all I got for you as far as the updates. Again, that was just speculation on Mike Williams. We'll see what happens, and just want to give you kind of a quick update what that would mean for him if he were to go ahead and sign with Kansas City Chiefs.